we remember as the destruction of the Temple of Solomon in 586 by Nebuchadnezzar, the destruction of the temple built by Herod in 70 AD by Titus, the Roman prince, and also, Father, the day that the Jewish people in Spain, the Sephardic people, were ordered to leave by this day. And so we remember this day, we remember the victims, and believe that we are going to learn so much today that would allow us to be a better class of men and women, not just in our faith, but in the world with so much terrorism, both international and domestic, and that the dehumanizing of our society through abortion and other situations, Father, that we would come closer to Torah. B'Shem Yeshua. Amen. You may take your seat. The name of this lecture is called Sephardic Legacy and Sephardic Destiny. And I think it is a memorial of the Inquisition, and today is Tish B'Av, or the 9th of Av, the 9th day of the month of Av in Hebrew, and a subtitle of today is Restore the Faith. I believe that Adonai has called me to restore the ancient Hebraic, Messianic, and Apostolic faith. And so I feel it is important for us to be part of restoring the true faith, the faith that Adonai gave to Moses, of course continued through Joshua, David, the prophets, and came and what we would call restored by Yeshua and the apostles, but then lost again. And we need to restore that faith. And this is in memory of the victims who suffered injustice, loss of property, torture, imprisonment, and death in the hands of the holy office of the Inquisition. Many of you know Eliezer Urbach, died in 2009. Eliezer was the first one. How many remember the first time he came to our congregation? Actually, I was a Catholic priest, remember? I was a Catholic priest, and he came back in 77 to our congregation, and he's the one that started me on this road back in 77, although I had, since a little boy, been interested and had a heart for Israel and Hebrew. But he's the one that came and blew the shofar in our congregation. And here I, as a Catholic priest, did the rest of the Mass with tears, and I had never heard the shofar before, and that changed my life. And we started bringing him many times. In fact, I think he came to Pastor Leroy's congregation several times also, and he passed away in 2009. Right before he passed away, he did the Pidyon Haben for my son Zachary also, and for all our kids. He dedicated all our kids, and I took Zachary and Adiel to Denver, where he was in his right before he died. He was in his 90s, and had him bless them again. He had not blessed or dedicated Ariel, so I took both of them and he gave them a blessing. But this is the person I call my mentor and the person that I learned so much from. I still have a lot of his Hebrew books that he gave me. And so he is a Holocaust survivor. By the way, he wrote a book on his journey, and we could talk about that later. We're going to be looking at finding our forefathers, a genealogical maze and miracle. It is a maze because how many of you had tried to find your ancestors and you hit brick walls, or you went around in circles and you ended up in different places? But the miracle is that we are finding, I have found, and many of you are finding your forefathers also. We began with a question, una pregunta, ¿quién somos? What does it mean to be Hispanic, Mexican, Chicano, or Latino? Or whatever words we want to, monikers or we want to say about ourselves. Where did our ancestors come from before they arrived in Spain? Where did our ancestors come from before they came to the New World in the Southwest? Are Hispanic people mentioned in the Bible? Do the prophets of old speak about the Hispanic people? Does Elohim have a plan for Hispanic people in these troublesome times we live in? What is our legacy? Dr. Stanley Horties, the New Mexico State historian, says, some of New Mexico's Hispanics, descendants of converted Jews who fled the Inquisition and then kept the secret so long they forgot it. We forgot that secret. By the way, that book is in the back if anybody wants to look at it. In a lecture by Andre Elion Brooks, she says, what do we know about the Jews who chose to convert and take their Judaism underground rather than accept expulsion from Spain in 1492 on the 9th of Av? What does the real story behind those who fled to the New World long before traditional Jewish history suggests Jews were even here? Now think of this. Secular Jewish history has the idea of Jews coming into the United States and then from the United States through the Santa Fe Trail in the 1840s and 50s to Las Vegas and Albuquerque. But there were already Jews here, unknown, secret, crypto Jews that didn't even know they were Jewish. They had kept the secret so long. Who was Carvajal or Robledo? What do we know about New Mexico's Anusim? The word Anusim, again, we're going to find out, is someone that has been forced into another faith. What are some of the present-day purposes to return to Hebraic faith after keeping a secret for 500 years? But something is happening. It's happening because we are seeing books being published. Here's to the ends of this. This is Dr. Stan Horties in Latina. There's an article there, articles everywhere. Books being written. This is La Herencia, the magazine of the Spanish, the New Mexico Genealogical Society. Books being written. On Channel 13 News, Bernadette Martinez, one of our primas, talking about the BRCA2 breast cancer that a lot of New Mexico women have, and some of our friends have died of. Some of our primas have died of. And again, it's all over the news. Of course, we know that Dr. Del Sanchez, one of the experts, and another one of our mentors, Dr. Del Sanchez, I have to thank Adonai for, because he has been in the forefront of trying to bring this concept of Sephardic legacy and Sephardic destiny to the whole world and to Israel. And he estimates that as much as 80% of Hispanics have Jewish roots. And so I would venture to say everyone here, you all have Sephardic roots. If we don't know where we come from, we don't know where we're going. If we don't know from who we came from, we don't know who we are. And so hopefully today we will start knowing where we came from. Now, of course, every one of us is probably a Heinz 57. How many are Heinz 57? You know, we have a little of this and a little of that. You do your genealogy, and there's all kinds of people that pop up in your genealogy and say, well, wait a second, I didn't know I had this. I didn't know I had that. But we want to find our identity. Who am I? Now, it is important to find out what our identity is, especially if it's Jewish. You see, Hebraic heritage is a little bit different than the heritage of being any other culture or race. Because in most races, they say, well, I'm... Oh. In most cultures or races, people say, well, I'm 50% Spanish, I'm 50% Native American. Or how many of you feel you're half Native American or quarter Native American or an eighth Native American or a 16th Native American or a 32nd Native American? And there comes a point, especially in legal status, that once you're, say, a 16th Native American, you're not a Native American. You can't register in any reservation or with any tribe. That's not the way it is in Hebraic faith. In Hebraic faith, if you're 1%, if you have 1%, just 1% of Jewish, you are a Jew. Why? Because it starts in Sinai. And in Sinai, when we went to Sinai, and all our ancestors were gathered there, before Adonai gave the covenant, went up and gave the covenant, he asked Moses and the people, will you follow me? In a sense, will you sign on the dotted line? Will you follow my covenant? Well, he hadn't given the covenant yet. And he said, will you follow the covenant? And our ancestors, Moses and our ancestors says, we will and our children, our descendants. That means if you are a descendant, even if you're 1%, they put you on the line. In fact, Adonai says, I make this covenant with you that are here around, but I also make it with those that are not here. Every descendant. So if you could trace your line even 1%, then you're liable to the covenant, to the Torah. And so we must come to the idea that our identity, and our identity to most of us, even though we're Heinz 57 and we have this percentage of this and that percentage of that, our actual identity from Adonai's point of view is to the person we trace up. ¿Quién soy y de quién soy? Who am I? Well, everybody knows that I'm Denis Ismael Otero. From whom am I? I'm from the Otero line going back. On my mother's side, I'm Martinez. And I've traced both the DNA for my father's line and I've traced the DNA for my mother's line. In fact, my mother's line and my father's line I traced to Spain, my mother's line, I traced to the Tower of Babel. Now, every one of us has two parents. How many of you have two parents? Everybody does. We have 4 grandparents, 8 great-grandparents, 16 great-grandparents, 32 great-great-great-grandparents, and 64 great-great-great, and I can't count after that. But here's the question. ¿Quién eres y de quién eres? Who are you and from whom are you? Whoop. Now, who is this person? Is this, how many of you think that this is my grandfather? Okay, and that my grandfather. He's kind of like a funny looking guy, isn't he? How many of you think he's my father? How many think he's my brother? I only have one brother, so you all know. But when I give this in conferences, again, some people, he's my older brother. How many think he's my uncle? How many think he's my cousin? Everybody's my cousin. He is Rabbi Israel Brody. He was the chief rabbi of Great Britain. And he's my 17th cousin. He's actually my 17th cousin. Our common ancestor is a person by the name of Isaac ben Hizkiah, born around 1000 in Baghdad, Babylon, Iraq today. He died about 1060 in Barcelona, Catalonia, Spain. So about some point in time, he moved from Baghdad to Spain, and he is the ancestor of Rabbi Israel Brody, who from Spain, their family went to the Ukraine and then England, and then he is my ancestor, who again from Spain to New Mexico. And here is the line between me, my dad, my grandpa, my great-grandpa, and going down the line to Isaac ben Hizkiah Nasi. Now, he was a Nasi. A Nasi means that he was part of the Davidic family. Notice that over here we have Maria Nunez, and we're talking a little while ago about the Nunez family. And Maria Nunez Halevi, the daughter of Isaac Halevi, the daughter of Abraham Halevi, the son of Abraham Halevi, the son of Don Judah de la Calavera Halevi. And then again, this is a very famous converso family. Judah was a very staunch Jew, but at the time of Isaac, there was great persecutions, and his daughter, Maria, converted, married Amaluenda, and this is the son that we come from. In fact, if you are from New Mexico, these families here, you all are related to this family. Every one of you that has done your genealogy could probably find that these people here are your grandparents, because we usually have in this area right here the common, because these are the ones that came from Spain to New Mexico. And again, Hillel the Great also is part of our family, and these are all the different people that are part of this family that are your ancestors. So when you read the Bible, remember, you're reading the history of not them, not the Jews, but our family. Have you ever climbed your family tree? Who are your forefathers? Now, this is a family tree. I'm going to ask Mr. T to pass a family tree out. And what I like you to do is to fill this out as much as you know, as much as you can. And when you fill it out, I would like you to bring it back or send it to us. There's an address there. You could send it to us, and I would venture to say that, whoa, that if you have people in this line, that I will find that we are related through the people in this line. Here's where you're at. That's your father. This is you. This is your father. This is you. This is your father, your mother, your grandfather, grandmother on the paternal side. This is the paternal side. And again, the one on top is always your father. This is your mother. Once you fill this out, I bet you I could trace these people through our databases as to who they are and whose they are. This is our thesis. Some, now remember, some, we can't say all, but we could say some of the Hispanic people in the Southwest and Mexico are descendants of the Sephardic Jews who have been in the Iberian Peninsula since the time of Solomon, and even before. In this study, we will trace the people of the book from our father Abraham to the American Southwest in our present time to every one of you here today. Now, this is our learning objectives. This is what we are going to be studying today. We do have some disclaimers. We're not talking about two-house theology, those who understand that, of returning to rabbinic Judaism, about getting Gentiles to start following Judaism. We're not a Jews for Jesus group trying to convert Jews to Christianity, which again, since I do this in public and secular arenas with secular people coming, we have to put these disclaimers. Psalms 126. When Yahweh turned again the captivity of Sion, this was right after the captivity for 70 years in Babylon. We were like them in a dream. Then was our mouth filled with laughter and our tongue with singing. Then they said among the Goyim, among the Gentiles, among the nations, Yahweh has done great things for them. Yahweh has done great things for us. We are glad. Turn again our captivity, O Yahweh, as streams in the Negev, and underline that, Negev. They that sow in tears shall reap with joy. He that goes forth weeping, bearing precious seed, shall doubtless come again, rejoicing, bringing his sheaves with him. We have been in captivity now for about 2,000 years, not the 70 years in Babylon, but the 2,000 years around the world. And this is my prayer. Turn again our captivity as streams in the Negev. Now, the word Hebrew is the word Ivrit, means from the other side. Abraham's family that followed Haderech, the way of Yahweh, was a Hebrew. Israel is Israel, Yaakov's name. An Israelite is the descendant of Jacob or Israel. Yehuda, a Jew. All Jews are Israelites, but not all Israelites are Jews. Because remember, we have the 14 tribes of Israel. The house of Israel is the united monarchy after the northern kingdom. The house of Judah is the southern kingdom. A converso is a convert. A nuevo creyente is a new believer. A nuevo cristiano is a new Christian. A marrano is a swine. A crypto Jew, the secret adherence to Judaism by converts. Anusim are those forced to adhere to another faith. B'nai Anusim are descendants of those forced to adhere to another faith. So we would call ourselves not Anusim or crypto Jews. We would call ourselves B'nai Anusim or B'nai crypto Jews because we are the descendants of those people. And of course, the church in Hebrew, the Kehillah, the Ecclesia in Greek. Our journey begins over 4,000 years ago with the land of Spain, the Iberian Peninsula. Iberia dates back to before 200, before the Common Era of Rome. The word Iberia means the same as the word Iber, Iberia, which means Hebrew's land. The root Hebrew word was originally spelled with an I and later spelled with an E. The word is Eved, pronounced Eved in Hebrew, or Eber, Eved in Espanol. Eber is the great-grandson of Shem. Shem's grandson, Salah, called his son Eber from the Hebrew word Avad, which means to cross over. So a Hebrew is someone who crosses a river, who crosses across. Eber to Peleg, and remember that's when the earth was divided. Where did the other sons cross over to? Again, and the vessels from the coast of Kittim shall bear down on Asher, bear down on Eber, he too will be destroyed. And so this is some of the history of Eber in biblical times. The name Ebro appears to be of the same origin as the word Hebrew. And the same thing could go for Ireland. Many people call Ireland Fireland, but Ireland was called Erin, and the Romans called it Ibernia or Ivernia. And it's possible that the Irish and the Eber people were the same thing. What's interesting about those of you that have done your DNA, if you are R1b DNA, which is a Celtic DNA, it seems that most people that are Levites have the Celtic R1b DNA. In fact, what's very interesting about that is it turns out that King Tut was R1b Celtic DNA. How could King Tut be Celtic DNA? Well, one of the things that we're researching on is, well, if the Levites have R1b DNA and the Levites were in Egypt, is it possible that one of King Tut's great-great-great-grandfathers was a Levite? And as they migrated to Ireland, the Celtics are considered to be of all Celtic people, all Celtic men are R1b. How many of you are R1b here? Anybody? James R1b and your family line R1b. It would be a Levitical type DNA. And the original name for Spain was Iberia and Iberian Peninsula. Again, even Pliny, the historian, talks about this. And I'm going to kind of go fast because we only have about an hour and a half to go through this. And this is probably about a 4-hour lecture. Here's the family of Abraham and how they went around the Fertile Crescent. This is where Abraham was from. Abraham was from this area right here. There's Syria, here's Israel. and the Fertile Crescent went around, and you could actually see the fertileness of the crescent. Here's the sons of Jacob, all the way to Yeshua. The land of Canaan, this is where our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and his 12 sons lived. Joseph's journey to Egypt. Look how fertile the Goshen, all this is Goshen. Moses delivers the covenant from Yahweh to the children of Israel in 3 forms, spoken, written on a scroll, on tablets, twice. There is one Torah for one people. And so anyone who is baptized into Yeshua now is liable to also keep the Torah. Now watch what Deuteronomy says. Yahweh shall cause you to be smitten before your enemies. You shall go out one way, then flee 7 ways before them, and shall be removed, dispersed into all the kingdoms of the earth. And it shall come to pass, as Yahweh rejoiced over you to do good and multiply you, so Yahweh will rejoice over you to destroy you and bring you to naught. And you shall be plucked from the land of Israel, whether you go to possess it. And Yahweh will scatter you among all people, from one end of the earth to the other. And there you shall serve other gods, and we have, which neither you nor your fathers have known, even wood and stone. How many remember bowing down between wood and stone? And among those nations you shall find no ease, neither shall the sole of your feet have rest. The wandering Jew. Have you heard about the wandering Jew? But Yahweh shall give you there a trembling heart and failing ears and sorrow of mind. And your life shall hang in doubt before you, and you shall fear day and night, and you shall have no assurance of life. What a judgment for not following Torah. And it's happened. Wherever the Jew goes, he's persecuted. Wherever the Jew goes, no matter how good he does, and he becomes an asset to the country and to the people. But what do? They stab him in the back. This is our story. This is our lot. The 12 tribes, the United Kingdoms, Solomon's Israel. Now watch this. From Solomon's time, Tarshish, here's Spain, Evidia, and here's Tarshish. Tarshish was located in what is now southwest Spain, in the country at the mouth of the river Guadalquivir. There was a considerable Israelite colony in Tarshish, probably at the time of Solomon, and certainly as early as the destruction of his temple. Phoenicia and Tarshish engaged in substantial reciprocal trade. According to Strabo, another historian, this important Hebrew Israelite colony was established soon after the Trojan War. 2 Chronicles 9 says, for the king's ships, Solomon's ships, went to Tarshish with his servants of Hiram. Every 3 years, once came the ships of Tarshish, bringing gold, silver, ivory, and apes, by the way. So here's Israel, here's Tarshish. So every 3 years, the ships would go back and forth. And of course, you know that whenever you trade with some other place, some of the men find young ladies there, and they get married and stay there and establish a new colony. The word Evidia, again, is a corruption of the word Evidia, which means Hebrew's land. Again, from Abraham, who was not Jewish, by the way. Abraham was not a Jew. A lot of people have this idea that Abraham the Jew. No, he wasn't a Jew. He was a Hebrew. Isaac was not a Jew. Jacob was not a Jew. They were Hebrews. One of the sons, Judah, is from where all the Jews come from. And the other tribes are from their own tribes. We'll talk about that later. Divided kingdom. We had 2 captivities and 2 dispersions where the prophecies in Deuteronomy started taking place. So from 722 and 605, we have Jewish people and Israelite people going all over the earth. But Jonah arose to flee to where? Tarshish, from the presence of Yahweh. Of course, the presence of Yahweh was telling him to go to Nineveh. He went down to Joppa and found the ship going to Tarshish. So he paid the fare and went down to it to go with them to Tarshish from the presence of Yahweh. Now, we see this all the time here in New Mexico with some of our primos. One of our primos gets busted for doing this or doing that, and they can't find him, becomes a fugitive. Where does he take off to? He takes off to his primos' houses in northern New Mexico. Jonah was busted by Adonai. You know, Adonai told him, go to Nineveh. Instead of going to Nineveh, he gets on a boat, goes to Tarshish. Why is he going to Tarshish? Because that's where there's a Jewish colony, and Tarshish is the furthest away from Israel. When you're fleeing, you find the farthest place where you have primos. So he probably went with his primos over there. My Elohim will cast them away, because they did not hearken to him, and they shall be wonders among the nations. I will set my sign among them, and I will send them such as escape of them to the nations. To where? Tarshish. So Adonai promised that he was going to send our ancestors to Tarshish, to Spain, Iberia, Eber's land, if we have not. And there they shall declare my glory among the nations. So here's Israel in captivity to Babylon, to Assyria, and all of a sudden to Tarshish. And of course, many of them migrated from Israel to the east. And all this is Afghanistan, by the way. A lot of people don't realize this, but many of the Taliban are from the lost 10 tribes. Many of people who are Muslims, I would say that the majority of Muslims in the East are B'nai Anusim. They're Israelites who were forced to be Muslims with the sword. And after all these years of Muslim rule, they, like us, became Catholics or became this or became that. And we forgot the secret also. In India, there's a big community, same thing in China, all over this area. There's strong Jewish communities. This is probably a good place to say this, but there is in fact, let's do this. How many of you have not seen a movie called Quest for the Lost Tribes? Quest for the Lost Tribes. If you haven't seen that movie, it is one of the most important movies because right now, Adonai says in the last days in the book of Revelation, there is 12,000 from each of the tribes, 144,000 that will be regathered. And the regathering is already happening of the 10 tribes, and it's happening over here. Josephus says the 10 tribes are beyond the Euphrates. This is the Euphrates. So Josephus at the first century says they're beyond the Euphrates till now and are an immense multitude not to be estimated by numbers. And these are the people that became Muslims. On that day, a great shofar will sound. Those lost in the land of Asher, which right now is the east, what is now Iran, Iraq, all these areas, will come, and they will worship Yahweh on the holy mountain of Jerusalem. This was actually fulfilled literally right after the Gulf War, right after we took Baghdad. they brought all the Jews that were in Baghdad, the final remnant of the Jews in Baghdad, from the time of the Babylonian captivity, they brought them, and they brought them before the Western Wall, and there was great rejoicing exactly as the shofar will sound. In fact, it was the sound of the shofar that brought me back. Again, dry bones, 2 sticks, the regathering. These are some of the groups that descend from a lost tribe. And again, southern India, northeast India, Bukharan Jews, from Ethiopia, the Nigerian. And many of these Ethiopian claim to be from the tribe of Dan. And some of these in Nigeria and Ethiopia also are Cohens. And of course, the Samaritan are descendants of Ephraim. Again, some of these people claim to be Jews, but they don't know what tribe they're from. And here's the Babylonian Empire where a lot of the people went. In the period of Nebuchadnezzar's conquest of Jerusalem and the Babylonian captivity that followed, there are references to the Jewish exile which are in the west, in Sepharad. Sepharad was the ancient Hebrew name for Spain, and we get this from Obadiah. And the captivity of the host of the children of Israel, those that are among the Canaanites, even unto Zephirah, and the captivity of Jerusalem, the exiles of Jerusalem that are in Sepharad shall possess the cities of the Negev. Now the Hebrew word Sepharad comes from the word Sefer. A Sefer is a scroll or a book. Sepharad is the land of the book or the land of the Torah scroll. Over here, we have some Torah scrolls. Afterwards, maybe one of our deacons or one of our leaders here, our elders, could show you our Torah scrolls. This is a Sefer. This is called a Sefer. And a Sefer is a Torah scroll. And Sepharad is the land of the Torah scroll. Now think of that. If Sefer is the land of the Torah scroll, and Evidia is Hebrew's land, the connection to Spain and Torah and the Bible is richer and deeper than what has been known before. Again, the first century rabbinic scholar, Yotanan ben Uziel, calls España, referring to Spain, and he translated Sepharad as España. Seferino, Sefer. Anybody have a relation named Seferino? You got it. Hispania came under Roman control with the fall of Carthage. Again, they fought the Iberians and defeated them here by Seville. And then for 700 years, it was under Roman occupation. By the 1st century, there was a sizable community of Jews in España. And Hispania, this is Roman. When the Romans had España, it was divided to 3 sections. The Romans' army completed their conquest in 19 under Augustus. And so the emperors Trajan, Hadrian, Marcus Aurelius were all born in Hispania. They were all Hispanos. Of course, the Great Commission, go make disciples of all nations. Days are coming when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah. Remember, the new covenant is not with Gentiles. Oops. The new covenant is with the house of Judah and the house of Israel. And then the Gentiles come in by grafting. Between 500 before the Common Era and 500 Common Era, this is where Jews lived. So Jews were all over. 500 years before and 500 years after Yeshua, Jews were all over the inhabited world. James, the brother of John in Spain, the apostle probably went to Spain, Lusitania, in the Roman colony, and then he went back to Jerusalem. He was martyred in Jerusalem in 44, but his body, because he had a heart for Spain, his body was brought back by his disciples from Syria to Galicia, and they're transferred to Compostela. Today, the body of James, the apostle, is in Compostela. Compostela, Galicia, is where my great-great-great-grandfather, the first Otero that came from Spain, born in 1701, came to New Mexico and from Spain in 1732. My great-grandfather was from this area. Paul, we believe, continued the work and brought the doctrine of Mosaic, Messianic, and Apostolic faith to Catalonia, Aragon, Valencia, and especially Andalusia. And again, this is from the historian's history of the world. Again, from a letter of Clement, now in Romans, he says he's going to Spain. But from a letter of Clement to the Corinthians, it states that Paul did travel to Spain. Also in the Maraturian fragment, it mentions that Paul was in Spain. And there are references to the existence of congregations in Spain in the writings of Irenaeus and Tertullian. But evidence for the Jewish believer comes only in the middle 3rd century. Why do we have Jews, then it's silent, then Jews again? Because those were very anti-Semitic days, and Jewish believers laid low or assimilated into the mainstream. This is the same thing that happened in Jerusalem. In 135, no Jews were allowed in Jerusalem. All of a sudden, there was no Jews in Jerusalem. Well, there was a lot of Jews, but again, they laid low. They changed their names. They assimilated, took on Gentile names, as our ancestors have here in New Mexico, and you go into the mainstream. Here is, after the destruction of the temple, here is the destruction of the temple. Now, what happened to the Kohanim, the Jewish priests? The Jewish priests pretty much went from Israel after the destruction of the temple and went to northern Africa, to Tunisia and Morocco. Even today, in Tunisia, there's an island all made up of Cohens. And they're all Cohen people. And then from there to Spain, from Spain to England, Ireland, France, all the way up to Ukraine. And over here, they became Ashkenazi Jews. Before and after these Roman destructions, Jewish nobility leave for Spain. The Targum of Jonathan, which is an Aramaic translation of some scriptures, refers to Jewish leaders from Jerusalem who had sailed away to Sepharad. So a lot of the leadership, and always the common folk usually stay and get killed. The nobility con dinero, ¿qué hacen los ricos? They take off, like even right now, the ricos are trying to do things so that they could go to the moon. If something happens in the earth, they want to go live in the moon or Mars and establish a colony over there. And remember, Spain would be as the moon was to us in those days. Again, Josephus confirms that there was a Jewish diaspora living in Europe, made up of Judah and Benjamin, and talking about Asia and Turkey, when the rest of them are beyond the Euphrates. Of course, from the 5th to the 7th century, the Visigoths came in, and the Visigoths, who were Arians, or what we'd call today Jehovah's Witnesses, forcibly baptized 90,000 of Jewish subjects and expelled those who would not accept Christianity. Of course, some of the conversos continued to practice their religion secretly, crypto, and openly during the Moorish rule. So Catholic rule afterwards really was bad for the Jewish people. The Moors or Muslims really is what saved the Jews from Spain. And of course, the Babylon captivity was from 586 to 537. When the second temple was rebuilt by Zerubbabel, the majority of Jews stayed in Babylon until the Muslim invasions of the 6th century. Now, what's interesting is that our ancestors that came to New Mexico through the Isaac Hezekiah line are some of these Jews that remained in Jerusalem until the year 1000. From Babylon, here's Babylon, our ancestors actually went from Babylon to Spain. Our ancestors left Israel in 586 at the captivity. And they went from 586, and they stayed all this time till they came to Spain. Again, Moorish Spain was when the Moors, the Muslim rule was predominant there in Spain. The Reconquista was a war of conquest, and after this, it became a war of liberation. And here's the Reconquista of the Spanish of Spain. These were all Muslims, and here was the Catholic. So the Catholics started kicking the Muslims out. And this is a fascinating story. Ferdinand and Isabella completed the Reconquista started in 1482, 1492, 10 years. Here's Ferdinand and Isabella, the happy couple. Here's a united Spain, except religion. And they started what I call the one faith movement. They wanted all of Spain to be one faith. They united all the kingdoms of Spain into one kingdom. But there was Moors, there was Jews, Protestants started coming in through France. And so what they decided to do is start a one faith movement. And this is what brings in the Spanish Inquisition. Although the Inquisition had actually been started by Constantine, anyone who was not a Roman Catholic, the Inquisition actually was started at that time, but in Spain, it didn't start till this time. And of course, before this, Christians, Muslims, and Jews lived in tolerance for centuries. But with the new king and queen, they call themselves the Catholic, Los Reyes Católicos, and started the Inquisition in Spain. So Jews that converted to Christianity are accused of secretly sabotaging the Christian faith. They became the pawns in a game of chess with dire consequences. Thousands perished in a ritual called the Act of Faith. And this is from the secret files of the Inquisition, episode 2. and they became nuevos cristianos, conversion of Jews to Catholicism. Of course, many convert for different reasons. Some for true faith. We would call these Messianic Jews. Some for financial. Some to save their lives and their families. Many continued in Judaism as crypto or hidden Jews. Of course, 50 to 70,000 chose to avoid expulsion by conversion to Christianity. Many conversos, again, the majority of Spain's the Jews in Spain converted to Catholicism. And this is what they said: if they are not good Christians, the king said, their descendants will be. So it doesn't matter about the first generation. We'll get their kids. By the way, that's what Nikita Khrushchev, I was mentioning the other day, that Nikita Khrushchev prophesied, promised that even though communism was fought by Kennedy and all that thing, remember when he gets his shoe and puts it, he said our grandchildren would be communists and would be socialists. And that's what's happening today through the Democratic Party. In fact, if anyone is a Democrat, I would encourage you to get away from the party, because it's becoming the party of the socialists. And the best known convert was the rabbi from Burgos, Spain, Salomon Halevi. He was the son of Isa Halevi, the brother of Maria Nunes Halevi. And he assumed the name of Pablo Santa Maria. Can you imagine? He's the chief rabbi of Burgos, Spain. And he converts, and he calls himself now Pablo de Santa Maria. If you know people with the last name Santa Maria, San Pablo, any good, name, Catholic name, they're probably Jews. Because the best way to say you're not Jewish is to say, mi nombre es Santa Maria. Rabbi Salman Halevi, the Nunes de la Calavera, is my 18th great uncle. His sister, Maria, is my 18th grandmother. Now, this guy really hated Talmudic Judaism. And he was a Torah scholar. So I would say this guy was really what we would call a real Messianic Jew, because he was a Torah scholar, but he had a hatred of Talmudic Judaism, which I believe every one of us should. Of course, the Marranos are secret Jews. The word Marrano actually means a swine, and they were called swines. And here is a 1892 painting of a secret Seder in Spain during the times of the Inquisition. And so they're having a secret Seder so that it wouldn't be known to the authorities. And again, crypto-Judaism is a secret adherence to Judaism who are publicly professing to be of another faith. Practitioners are referred to as crypto-Jews. The term crypto-Jew is also to describe descendants who maintain some Jewish traditions of their ancestors, oftentimes secretly, while adhering to other faiths, mostly commonly Catholicism. From 1478 to 1834, the Inquisition killed thousands of people in Spain and its colonies and arrested countless Moors. It was intended to maintain Catholic orthodoxy in their kingdoms. The Inquisition worked in large part to ensure the orthodoxy of recent converts, especially Jews, Muslims, and others. And the Grand Inquisitor, the first Inquisitor, was Torquemada. Now, what's interesting about Torquemada is that his grandmother was a conversa. And so he comes from a Jewish line. But he became one of the worst persons of the Inquisition. You can see that by his happy face. Torquemada believed that as long as the Jews remained in Spain, they would influence the tens of thousands of recent Jewish converts to Catholicism to continue practice Judaism. So his idea was, get them out of here. And this is the seal of the Inquisition. Again, the Inquisition many times people think is against Jews. The Inquisition really never killed a Jew. The only people they killed were Jews that had been baptized as Christians, and now that they're Christians, if they go back to Judaism or they're caught practicing Jewish faith, they're killed, not as a Jew, but as a heretic, because they're no longer Jews, now they're Christians. So they only kill Christians who are ex-Jews. There's all kinds of penalties of the Inquisition. They took your land away. They took your riches away. You could go to prison for life. The ultimate was an auto de fe where they had a public court and they burned you at the stake. And here's the auto de fe. It's a ritual of penance. And many times, even though you confess and says, I am a Jew and I practice Judaism, I repent. Okay, you are forgiven, but your penalty is being burned at the stake. So you were between a rock and a hard place. Here are some of the tortures. Again, the monks in the background await the confession with quill and paper. So as soon as they confess, they are able to either be life in prison, burned at the stake, or sent to do 2,000 rosaries or 2,000 Our Fathers and Hail Marys. How many remember that one? The public trials and executions. This was common in Spain, Mexico, Peru, Cartagena in Colombia. This is the Alhambra Decree. It was an edict issued on 31 March 1492. And all Jews are supposed to live by 31 July of that year. 31 July of 1492 is today, the 9th of Av. Because remember, this is from the solar year. We follow a lunar year. Was officially overturned on December 16th, 1968 at the Second Vatican Council. And on July 31st, 9th of Av, 1492, the Spanish kingdom forced more than 200,000 Jews to choose between conversion to Catholicism or expulsion with nothing but their clothes on their backs. They had to leave. And by the way, this is a very bad time because a lot of Spaniards said, you know what? They can't take their jewels, they can't take their money. They actually thought that Jews were swallowing diamonds and money, gold pieces, to take with them. So at the docks, many of them, they'd find a rich Jew and they'd cut him up to see if there was any diamonds or gold or precious stones in their stomachs. Can you imagine that? Here's Torquemada at the Spanish court. These are some Jewish, in fact, you could read about them in the back at our museum, but these are some Jewish noblemen and rich men that come and give to Ferdinand and Isabella hundreds of thousands of dollars so that the expulsion wouldn't take place. And they were just about to, but Torquemada comes in with a cross, and he actually throws the cross at the king and queen and tells them that they're not good Catholics if they do this. The king and queen keep the money, but they don't do anything about the Jews. Don Isaac Arbenavel, again, one of our ancestors, in 1490 was appointed treasurer to the Spanish monarchs Torquemada, the head of Spanish Inquisition, persuaded the royal couple to expel the Jews, despite Bravanel's important service to the crown. His attempts to have the decree of expulsion revoked were unsuccessful. Here's Cristobal Colon on July 31st, 1492, the 9th of today, received the decree to leave the mainland on the evening of 3rd August. Again, Columbus departed from Palos de la Frontera with 3 ships, the Niña, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. Everyone knows the song, right? We used to sing that song in grade school all the time. Nobody sings that song today. Anybody know the whole song? Was Cristobal Colon a Jew? This is Cristobal Colon's diary. In the same month in which their majesties issued the edict that all Jews should be driven out of the kingdom and its territories, in the same month they gave me the order to undertake with sufficient men my expedition to the discovery of the Indies. What happened to the Jews that stayed in Spain? Most of them became crypto-Jews, and most of them are our ancestors, because later on, within 2-3 generations, their children, being Catholics, are the ones that came to New Mexico. The conversos were under increasing pressure from the Inquisition, looking for a place where they could retain their Spanish Jewish identity. They went to the east, south, north, and west. The majority went back to the east, Israel, Egypt, Turkey, to Amsterdam, Russia, England, Africa, and many of them came here to the southwest. Here's the Spanish migration. Again, all these different places. Many of them went to Portugal, but in 1496, in agreement to marry Isabella, the daughter of Spain monarch, condition of the marriage, Portugal had to expel the Jews. Can you imagine how these people worked? Here's the dispersion of the Jews. Some focused on Mexico. In 1531, large numbers left Spain and Portugal for the New World. And of course, it wasn't called Mexico then, it was called New Spain. It did not become Mexico until 1820. New Mexico was named New Mexico before Mexico was named Mexico. Did you guys know that? The arrival in the New World, and they usually arrived in Veracruz, and from Veracruz to Puebla to New Spain, what is now Mexico City, and then to New Mexico, straight to New Mexico. The Holy Office of the Inquisition established in New Spain in 1571. Now, why would you need an Inquisition in a new land with only Catholics? And so it is because many of the people started coming and were looking for secret Jews. Cortez arrives in Mexico. There's Veracruz. He comes to Tenochtitlan, which is now called Mexico City. Of course, they flee to all of Latin America. Here's the Spanish colonial world. This is Portuguese. Again, this is later became English. From 1492 to the 1820s, this was Spain, New Spain. So New Spain was from the tip of South America to Canada. And here we are in the middle. Of course, many believe that many crypto-Jews were going to New Spain, and so they started an inquisition. They found and condemned synagogues in what is now Mexico City, and they instituted the law of the pure blood, which prohibited migration to New Spain for new Christians, again, from Judaism. Anyone who could not prove to be an old Christian for at least 3 generations. You had to prove that you were a Christian for 3 generations. So what did they do? Just like during the Holocaust, you forged papers. So most of our ancestors actually came here with forged papers. Again, this begins the Mexican Inquisition, and we put Mexican there because it wasn't known as the Mexican Inquisition. It was an extension of the Spanish Inquisition in the New World. Almost all events associated with the official establishment of the Holy Office of the Inquisition occurred in Mexico City, where the Holy Office had its own palace, which is now the Museum of Medicine on República de Brasil Street, if you've been there. The official period of the Inquisition in Mexico lasted from 1571 to 1820. Of course, the Inquisition in Spain lasted till 1832, 37, around there. By the mid-17th century, some 15,000 residents of Ciudad Mexico were tried for observing Jewish rites in private. Punishment ranged from prison to death, tied to a burning stake. Again, these are some of the people that were burned alive. The Gaspar Robles family, another family, 150 individuals were arrested within 3 to 4 days, brought before the Holy Office. Many of them were tried. Some of them were burned at the stake. Many of them were sent to the prison island of the Philippines. The Inquisition, I went to a conference of Sephardic Jews in where was that? No, not San Antonio, in Nuevo Laredo, Texas and Mexico. And one of the speakers was this Japanese guy. And he was Japanese, totally Japanese. And he stands up and he says, Buenos días, me llamo Antonio Rodriguez. Antonio Rodriguez. I guess Japanese. And he told us a story about his ancestors that were busted for being Jews in Mexico. And they were sent on a prison galleon as oarsmen to the Philippines. And on the way to the Philippines, what happened is that there was a typhoon and the ship overturned. And three guys who were crypto-Jews got saved by a Japanese fishing boat along with other men. Well, they, of course, were taken to Japan, and there, as always, they found some Japanese girls. They got married. They had kids. They retained their Rodriguez last name, their Spanish, and their Hebraic faith. And to this day, Antonio Rodriguez is a descendant of crypto-Jews that were sent to the Philippines on a prison, it was the prison island of the Spaniards. Here is New Spain, and here is Nuevo Mexico. Here's Nuevo Mexico, Alta California, New Vizcaya, the names that the states in the New Spain were given. Many conversos accompanied Cortés in 1519. Although we don't have proof of documentation, what is provable is by 1571, there were enough conversos and crypto-Jews to justify the establishment of a local tribunal of the Inquisition to seek out those practicing Judaism. The three tribunals, I've been to the one in Mexico City. Outside, I wasn't able to go in that day, but I've been to the one in Cartagena, Colombia, and these were where they were at. Again, part of the Mexican Inquisition were insincere converts convicted of heresy, crypto-Jews, convicted of relapsing into their ancestral faith. Here's a thing called El Quemadero. And this plaque says, in front of this place was the Quemadero, the burning place of the Inquisition from 1596 to 1771. It's in the convent of San Diego in Mexico City. And we've been to this. And so right here is where they would burn him at the stake in front of this convent. Anybody else been there? Anybody been there to that place? If you ever go to Mexico City, ask them to the convent of San Diego. They fled northward to escape the Inquisition. How far did they travel? In 1590 and 1598, they moved further north into New Mexico. Over the next century, members of several families were deported for trial in Mexico City. Their crime? Practicing Judaism in secret. By the way, the United States acquired New Mexico in 1848. So we became separate from Spain in 1820, and we were a part of Mexico from 1820 to 1848. 1707, I believe. Right. This is Luis de Carvajal. And he was a Spanish-Portuguese governor of Nuevo León, Monterrey in Mexico. In 1596, at the height of the Inquisition's fervor, he was declared a heretic. And Luis de Carvajal, again, here's more of his story. And many of his soldiers and people were documented to be crypto-Jews. If you ever go to Monterrey, Monterrey means Mountain of the King. And so Nuevo León is the new lion. So look at this Jewish crypto-Jew calls this place Nuevo León, the new lion, the Lion of Judah. Monterrey, the mountain or the forest of the king. And these are other crypto-Jews that were burned at the stake. Many of them are related to Carvajal, his family, and our family. Some of these are related to us. The founder of Monterrey, Carvajal's, I believe, nephew. Right, yeah, the Lumbroso. This gentleman right here was a nephew of Carvajal. Now, when was it? 2 weeks ago, we had one of his primos come and actually do some music, the Lumbroso. How many of you came for that concert? If you didn't come for that concert, you missed. Whenever we have concerts like that, please come because, yeah, it's on YouTube. Yeah, we put it on YouTube. In fact, many people in San Antonio are descendant of Carvajal. They're actual straight line descendants of Carvajal. Dr. Sanchez is also a descendant of the Lumbroso Carvajal family. Very famous family, and many of you here are too. Again, his nephew. Now, the nephew was one of these young guys that says, I'm a Jew. I don't care what anybody says, I'm a Jew. But when they caught him, he ratted on everybody else that was a Jew. And he ratted on his mother and his sisters. They're Jews too. We're all Jews. And they burned him at the stake, and he also was burned at the stake along with them. Yeah. The line was passed through the women because they figured that the men would brag, which turned out here. And so that is absolutely true. Here's the burning of the stake of the Carvajal family. And they would put these dunce caps on them and put them with what's called the San Benito uniform. to make them look like fools. Here are some of the tortures. You could see all the tortures back there and read about them in the museum. La Silla. Coronado came from Mexico City to Compostela, by the way. This was Nueva Galicia was named Compostela. Compostela in Spain is in Nueva Galicia, in Galicia, Spain. And he came up here at Culiacan. This is the home of our brother Antonio Camargo. This is where Camargo's from. Now, you look at Brother Camargo Antonio. He doesn't look. He has red hair and his little güerito grandkids. Where's, and so Culiacan and Compostela were very strong, also Jewish areas. And of course, they came to Zuni and this area. In fact, they're the ones that named New Mexico, Nuevo Mexico, because what we call today Mexico City was actually a valley, the Mexica Valley. And there was a Mexica people there, a little Mexica tribe that had been inundated by the Aztecos. But the Mexica people were gold smiths, and they were the workers for the Aztecas for gold. And the Mexica Valley was known for gold. So when some of Coronado's men and some of these people, even before Coronado came, they came to Zuni. And they looked at Zuni, but they were afraid of the Indians. So they looked at Zuni, and all of a sudden they saw that Zuni Pueblo, the houses, the pueblos were made of gold. These were gold palaces because they shined in the sun. So they go back to New Spain, to Tenochtitlan, and they said, "Hallamos un nuevo Mexico." We have found a new Mexico gold valley. So let's go over there. So they actually came for the gold. So when Coronado and them came and they first came to Zuni, they came straight to Zuni. Well, as they approached and with their horses, and of course the natives were afraid, but when they found out it was adobe and it was the silica, it was the shiny of the silica on the adobe. It was no gold. And so New Mexico was named Nuevo Mexico after the Mexica people, and not after Mexico, the country, or Mexico City, but after that. And so then this became El Reino de Nuevo Mexico. And of course, the early entrance was de Sosa. He was an associate of Carvajal and a Jew also, and he came here. He was accused of Judaizing. They actually sent people here from the Inquisition to take him back. And they took him back. They actually caught him in San Felipe Pueblo, and they took him back by force because he was not authorized to come over here. Juan de Onate, 1592, was ordered by King Philip II to colonize the upper Rio Grande, El Rio Grande. He began the expedition in 1598, fording the Rio Grande, El Rio del Norte, at present-day Ciudad Juárez, El Paso. Now, Ciudad Juárez and El Paso are one town. Today, the line, the Gadsden Purchase, divided it by the river. But remember, before there was Mexico and United States, Ciudad Juárez was part of New Mexico, was the entrance. In fact, it was the Ellis Island, or the entrance into New Mexico. And so it was part of New Mexico, except that Texas stole it. In fact, Texas has stolen a lot of our land constantly. Some Texans, if you go to Texas, how many of you have been to Texas? And you go to Texas and some of their restaurants, they have this map. And look at, and I don't know why they have this map. They have this map that shows Texas. And Texas is all up to the Rio Grande. If it was up to Texas, right now we'd be in Texas. And on the other side of the river where I live, I'd have to go to New Mexico, to the South Valley, and then cross over here to Texas. Those Tejanos, man. Yeah. In fact, I didn't know this. I was totally disappointed last week when I found out that Mr. T is not a New Mexican. He's a Texan. Did you guys know? I didn't know this. Did you know when you married him, did you know he was from Texas? He told you afterwards? Yeah. New Mexico, Oñate was a converso, descendant from Spanish Jews who were converted to Catholicism as early as 1390, when the Inquisition forced the Jews of Spain and Portugal to convert or leave. Oñate's ancestors converted to preserve their wealth and political positions in Spanish society. So they just did it for the money. Who was Juan de Oñate? His mother was Doña Catalina Salazar de la Cadena. How many are related to her? I know you, Virginia, some of you are. She was the descendant on her mother's line of the famous Jewish converso family, the Halevis, which we are. There is no clear evidence that Oñate knew or acknowledged his Jewish heritage, or that his family continued to practice the faith in secret after converting to Christianity. By the way, Doña Catalina is my 12th great-grandmother. And by the way, I could show you how you could find out who these people are to you. Of course, from modern-day Mexico City, he came up what is called El Camino Real. Now think of this. We live on the Camino Real. You know, we live on the Camino Real. Isleta Boulevard, 4th Street, is El Camino Real. And so our ancestors came from Mexico City, entered El Paso, and El Paso means the step, un paso, one step. So you step across. By the way, the first Thanksgiving in what we call America was done by Oñate when they crossed. And the first person that died in New Mexico was a Robledo man who was one of our grandfathers, and he died right there a little north of Las Cruces. That mountain north of Las Cruces is called Robledo Mountain. So Robledo Mountain was named after one of our ancestors. And here he is, there's his signature in El Moro. How many of you been to El Moro? If you haven't been to El Moro, go to El Moro, and there you'll find their signature on a rock. El Moro is from Gallup, a little between Gallup and south, between Gallup and Acoma, that area right there. Off of 6. El Camino Real was 1,600-mile-long trade route between New Spain and Santa Fe between 1598 and 1882 when the Santa Fe Trail came in. Of course, many who came to Oñate were crypto-Jews, appearing to be devout Catholics, but secretly continuing Jewish rituals. Are you a descendant of crypto-Jews? In 1626, the Spanish Inquisition was established in New Mexico. Thousands of Jews fleeing the Inquisition in Spain and Portugal had drifted into the Americas for centuries. Many were now in New Mexico. And in 1626, the sanctuary of the northern provinces ended for them. They came here for sanctuary. They came here for refuge, and only to be taken back to Mexico City, many of them to be burned at the stake. The headquarters of the Inquisition in New Mexico is this church and the ruins of the Coray Pueblo with the Iglesia de Nuestra Señora de la Purísima, the Immaculate Conception Church. And this is here in Punta de Agua. You know where Tajique and Punta Agua is on Manzano? If you go here, it's a national park today, run by the National Park System. It was a pueblo, and way up on the top of this is where right here, you'll go to this place right here. There's a sign that they put up, headquarters of the Inquisition. And I had a picture of that, and I don't know what happened to it. Of course, that they had, and it's only 9 miles north of Mountain Earth, by the way. On the morning of May 4th, 1662, Sargento Mayor, Sergeant Major Francisco Gomez Robledo, was awakened in his house at the corner of the Plaza of Santa Fe, which is now the La Fonda Hotel, La Fonda. How many have slept there at the La Fonda? If you've been there, this was where the Gomez Robledo Ranch was. At 5 a.m., by sounds of commotion among the orders, the Inquisition officials, Don Juan Manso, a chief constable of the Inquisition of Mexico City, arrested Gomez Robledo in his home. Here is Gomez Robledo, his signature. He was arrested, convicted, and sentenced by the Tribunal of the Inquisition for being a crypto-Jew. He was born in 1776 in Portugal. He was a son of Manuel Gomez and Ana Vicente. His brother Alonso was a high sheriff of the Holy Office of the Inquisition. Can you imagine his brother was a high sheriff? In 1604, Oñate brought him to New Spain, then to New Mexico. He joined the military and set the position of sergeant, becoming the most prominent military official in the colony. In 1610, during his military service, he co-founded the town of Santa Fe, where he and his family resided. He was also a rancher and a farmer. How could someone of this high stature be convicted by the Inquisition? Because as a sargento, him and his brother would go out and take the soldiers out on, fights against the Apaches. But because they had Jewish ancestry, they were very modest. And men, when they're out there in the field and you want to take a bath, you go into the river and everybody takes a bath in the river. Well, him and his brother would not do that. Him and his brother would go out secretly and take a bath modestly. And some of the officials didn't like, some of the other soldiers were saying, why do they go do that? So they would spy them out. And in spying them out, they found out one very important thing. They were circumcised. In other words, they were Jews. So they reported to the officials, and that's what busted him. Andres, his brother, was also accused of having Jewish heritage. It was believed that he was circumcised and secretly practiced Judaism. Andres died in Santa Fe around 1856 to 57. Andres Gomez Robledo is my 7th great-grandfather. Again, many of the present-day descendants are still following some of these rituals. Bartolome Romero also was a prominent person. And the captivity of Jerusalem, that in Sepharad shall possess the cities of the Negev. Our condition today, we've assimilated into Christendom, new Christians as conversos, some of them willingly, Messianic Jews, some of them forced, undercover Jews, paganism. Many of our people are now the ways of the nations. In fact, when I see some of these guys, their names on, lists of being wanted for murder or drugs, or these guys and their lowriders going, ese vato, with their bandana and stuff like that. Sometimes I say, can you imagine? These guys don't know it, but they're descendants of the prophets. They're descendants of Moses and the Israelites. What are they doing not following Torah? We need to get back to Torah. Some of us have adopted Messianic faith as a way of life. We have returned to Torah. We have restarted keeping the Sabbath. We have accepted the feast. We eat kosher, and we still love Yeshua. Here's from Newsweek magazine. This is Professor Diaz from Los Angeles. If you want to find out if you're a crypto Jew, these are some of the things that they say these are some of the telltale signs of being crypto-Jew. Again, sweeping the floor from the door to avoid defiling the mezuzah, doing all kinds of different things. The Cathedral of Santa Fe has Yod He Vav He, the name of Elohim, there. Watch this. Have you guys been to San Felipe Church in Albuquerque, downtown, Old Town? You see these two arrows? There's two Magen David, Stars of David, on the altar. How many have been to that church and never seen that? Yeah, look at that. Why? Yeah, on the side that. Yeah, they have a coffin. One time this was about 20 years ago, I was taking a tour of high schoolers. I was teaching New Mexico history, and I did a tour of Old Town and took them over here. And the coffin with a thing of Yeshua, of Jesus, is right there with him right after the crucifixion, all bloody and everything. And it had a window in front of it. It had a window in front of it. And, of course, it says, do not pass the line. Well, you know how teenagers are, high schoolers. Well, a couple of them, and I don't know if it was, it probably wasn't my kids. It was probably Leon and some of these kids. Well, they went over there, and they were starting to look, and they touched it, and the thing fell off. And the thing fell off and also made a sound. And we said, let's get out of here. So we just got out of there. I don't know whatever happened after that. But, yeah, they actually moved it. They did after that. Yeah, they did. Maybe I was on camera. Well, today I'd probably be in camera. Here's a Magen David in Tecolote Cemetery. Close to my grandfather's grave. My family's from Tecolote, New Mexico. And here's the Magen David. You guys see it? Right there. Now you have a cross, but what's in the top of the cross? A Star of David. Yes. Yeah. This is a Magen David in the old Santa Fe Trail in Abiquiu Lake. How many are from Abiquiu Lake or been to Abiquiu? Anybody from Abiquiu? This is a secret area, and not too many people know about this, but it is believed that this was a death scene, a massacre, and of course you have the crosses of the Christians. But you all have two things. Right here you have a Star of David, and there was a Star of David here that somebody had defaced, and you could tell because what's called the patina. You see how this is a little dull, and this is a little more white? Somebody defaced this, and this is a Star of David, there's a Star of David there, and this is called a dinger. A dinger is a sign of Elohim, a sign of God, a sign of the Star of David, and some of them are very flowery, like you could put a flower as a dinger. But here is a Star of David. Let me do that more close. You could actually see the Star of David right there. And if you look at it from this side, I should have taken another picture, but you could actually see it more. And this was a very Jewish area. This is where Sebastian, our brother that died, is from. Yes. What's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, maybe that'd be a menorah. I don't know. But yeah, there were 7 crosses. From local lore, they said that the people in that area said that there was a Apache massacre right here. Again, here's the Star of David. And how many have been to the Las Lunas Stone? Many people believe that this is crypto-Jewish. I don't think so. This is Paleo-Hebrew. This is the Ten Commandments in Paleo-Hebrew. I used to be the archaeologist of record for this stone for several years until during the Richardson administration, I was the archaeologist of record for here. When Martinez came in as governor, for some reason, she didn't like, and I don't know if it was because of her or others, didn't like Hebraic stuff. So what they did is they closed it as and I was no longer the archaeologist of record for this, but I translated this years ago, and this is the Ten Commandments in Paleo-Hebrew, and it's in Las Lunas. If you haven't been there, maybe my kids do field trips over there for people, and both Ariel and Zach could take you over there and show you what these are all about. According to a recent study, 19.8% of modern Spaniards and Portuguese have DNA reflecting Sephardic Jewish ancestry. And of course, you always find books, or here's a book on the Martinez clan. How many of you are Martinezes? Anybody have Martinez line? 1, 2, Martinez line. Are Spanish Jews. And the first time that I started finding out that we were Jewish is I would always hear from one of my aunts, I'm sure you remember Brown, my cousin Brown. His mom, Antonia, she lived across the street from you in that area for many years there on the Baca Circle. Well, she would always say, somos judíos. And she would always tell us that Grandma told her that they were Jewish. And I heard that since we were small. It turned out that she was, of course, like our family Catholic, but as soon as she could, she left Catholicism, and she joined a small little group that is still here in town. In fact, they have a little church, or they used to have a church in Sanco. It was La Iglesia de Dios del Séptimo Día. Anybody ever heard that? The Church of God of the Seventh Day. And they keep a lot of Hebraic things. They believe in circumcision. They believe in keeping the feast. They, of course, do the Sabbath. And they believe that they are descendants of Spanish Jews. No, they're not it's not a Seventh-day Adventist. It's another Church of God time. And so she's the first one. When I found out, when I became a believer, when I was in Vietnam, I wrote to my family that I became a believer. My aunt wrote me right away and told me, you need to accept the Sabbath. And so she's the first one that started telling me about the Sabbath. That was, back in 1970. And so she prayed, one day I pray that you will accept the Sabbath and you will accept the Hebraic way of doing things, como los judíos. And Adonai answered her prayer. The total number of dispersed B'nai Sephardim is unknown, but according to data provided by Israeli press, it is considered that in Latin America there exist no less than 35 million Hispanic descendants of Hispanic Jews. And this is the Israeli press. Here's Sepharditas, some Sephardic people in Mexico. This was taken several years ago. Of them, Shema Yisrael, Yahweh Eloheinu, Yahweh Echad. How do we search out our hidden past? Family traditions, surname dictionaries, personal names and places, heraldry, DNA. Family Tree DNA is the database that has gathered many samples of New Mexico family, resulting that many of the old families belong to haplogroups founded in Jewish families, including Kohanim model signatures indicating Jewish priestly and descent. Send if you have the Cohen model haplotype. Anybody here have? David does. Michael, stand up, Michael Sanchez has. Tom has, that sits over here, which means that from family tree DNA, it turned out that David and Michael, and they're up the straight line. Your father's 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 father was Aaron. Again, the male DNA is the Y chromosome, and the female line, because the mitochondria is transmitted from mother to child. Every male has an X and a Y chromosome. Women only have XX. So we have an X and a Y. Now, I would encourage you to do your DNA through family tree, because if you do your family finder, which is autosomno, it gives you a percentage of 5 generations or 32 great-great-great-great-grandfathers. And the Y DNA is through your father's line. And these are Jewish male DNAs. If you have this, E, G, J1, and 267 is the Cohen, J2, Q1, R1B1A or R1B1, P25. P25 is a Levi group. And so if you have any of these DNAs, then it might be Jewish. And here's the mitochondrial line through the mother. K1 and K and N are Jewish mitochondrial. The autosomal is all your cousins, your primos. The Cohen model haplotype was found in New Mexico by Father William Sanchez. He's not with St. Edwin's Parish anymore. I need to revise this. But I think he's up in northern New Mexico now. But his sister wanted to prove that, somos indios. We're indios. And so you find out through the male line. So she convinced her brother, the priest, to do his DNA. And so he's a priest, a Roman Catholic priest. And so he did his DNA. And all of a sudden, the head of the DNA, a Jewish man, calls him up and says, are you William Sanchez? Yes, I am. You sent your DNA? Yes, I sent my DNA. Well, just let you know that you're a priest. Oh, I know I'm a priest. No, a Cohen from the tribe of Aaron. And so today, Father Bill Sanchez admits that, and he does some Jewish things, but he does not want to leave the Catholic Church, does not want to become Messianic or anything like that. But he's, in fact, if you want to, this guy is so amazing. You tell him, who are the Nunes family? Who are the Sanchez? Who are this? This guy is so amazing. And we've tried to have him over, but because of his Catholicism, they don't let him teach in Protestant churches. So, but he's amazing. Here's my original family finder percentage. When I did my DNA, I was 40% European or Celtic, at 25% Middle Eastern Jewish, and 33% Native American. Now they've redid this, and my 25% Jewish, Middle Eastern, they're calling it West Middle Eastern today. But from the West Middle Eastern, they revised it to include that I am 7% Sephardic. So if you have gone into your family tree DNA and you find out that this is revised, find out of the Jewish that you are, find out how much of that is Sephardic. Because I realized that over here, when they originally did it, they just put Middle East Jewish. That's a very broad. So now they've divided it into East Middle East and West Middle East. And of the East or West Middle East, they give you a percentage of Sephardic and or Ashkenazi. and or Ashkenazi. Now, how many of you came up with any percentage of Sephardic or Ashkenazi? Anybody remember what percentage you came out? Yeah. Okay. Alice? Okay. And I came out as 7% Sephardic. My cousin, you know my uncle Perfecto, probably also, but his daughter came out as 32% Sephardic. I said, wait a second, how could my first cousin, who doesn't want to have nothing, totally católica, you know, she comes out with this high percentage of Sephardic, and me, her first cousin. And by the way, my brother could come out with more or less, because this is not the Otero line, this is me particular. Because the moment you're conceived, it's a little ball is dropped, and as it falls, that's what you are, like Plinko, like the. So every conception is totally unique. Every conception. So two brothers could have a different percentage. And on DNA, they actually get a single nuclear peptide, and that's how they get the DNA. Again, 20% of those tested in Iberia and Spain had haplogroups consistent with Sephardic. Esquivel said that the Halevi descendants became so interrelated with families of the Castilian nobility that a royal decree was issued by King Philip III between 1598 and 1691 in recognition of a papal brief written in 1596 by Pope Clement the Eighth, officially recognizing the Halevi family as an honorable and noble family of Christian faith. This was given because services provided by their says to the Roman Catholic Church, and became because the Halevis were believed to be descendants of the same Hebrew tribe as the Virgin Mary. And so they are also Davidic. Remember, the Virgin Mary, even though she was from the tribe of Judah, was Halevi. Because, if you remember, she goes to visit her cousin Elizabeth, and her cousin Elizabeth was Halevi. Zechariah and Elizabeth were both Halevi people. And so Mary was half Halevi and half Judah. She was half Jewish and half Levite. Yes. Correct. That is correct. And many of them did. Yes. 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 We don't know. We don't know. Sometimes I say, if with the knowledge we know now, many of them might be in our congregation today. Oh, wait a second. 5 to 10% of breast cancer and ovarian cancers are hereditary. Of those, around 85% are due to mutations in the BRCA genes, which cause breast and ovarian cancer. 1 in 40 Ashkenazi Jews carry a mutation in the BRCA genes. There are 3 specific mutations in the Ashkenazi Jewish population. If an Ashkenazi Jewish woman carries a BRCA mutation, most of the time it is one of the 3 founder mutations. Why do Hispanic, Sephardic women in New Mexico carry this mutation? Well, part of the problem is that Ashkenazi Jewish women, before the division, were Sephardic, because they didn't go to Ashkenaz, to Germany. They went to Spain, and from Spain, So it's actually not an Ashkenazi, it is a Sephardic mutation. And so that's why women, because Ashkenazi women didn't come to New Mexico, it was Sephardic women that came to New Mexico. The website sephardim.com has a long list of surnames. Caution is advised in reaching conclusions. By the way, just because your name is mentioned there doesn't mean that you are a descendant or you're Jewish. It just means that someone with that name was busted by the Inquisition, and we do have a chart in the museum. And how do I find out my origins? DNA test, do your genealogy, research your family history, ask questions, visit cities, homesteads, cemeteries. And again, these are some of the resources through Family Tree. If anybody wants to actually order their DNA kit today, you're welcome. I'll help you with that. Other resources are Ancestry.com, and they only do autosomnal heritage, only autosomnal, 23andMe, and the National Geographic. Many people do it with that. Genealogy Resources in New Mexico, or the HGRC. This has a list of every New Mexican from about, from the present to the coming of Oñate. Family search is free. You could just go there and type your ancestor's name, genie.com, $5 a month. Ancestry.com, theirs is about $10 a month, I think. Genie is better than Ancestry, although Ancestry, because it's Mormon, and the Mormons have been doing this for many years, they have a lot of resources that Genie doesn't have. But the good thing about Genie is that Genie connects you with every person in the whole world. Every person in the whole world. You could find out, with Genie.com, you could find out if Count Dracula was your grandfather. Ashkenazi Jews came to New Mexico. This is an excellent book to read. It turned out that my great uncle, Miguel Otero, is mentioned here as one of the builders of the first Jewish congregation in Las Vegas, New Mexico. How many have ever been in this building? Many of you have. And so this building is now owned by the Catholic Newman Center. Can you imagine? The Catholic Church owns the first Jewish synagogue in New Mexico. It has been approximately 1,500 years since the emergence of Hebrew Jews in the Iberian Peninsula, and 500 years since crypto-Judaism moved to the Americas. Today we find a large crypto-Jewish B'nai Anusim presence throughout the American Southwest. No one knows for sure how many there really are. Well, not all people of Jewish lineage are prepared to, at this time, to accept the challenge to living a fully Torah life. There are hundreds, if not thousands, who are hungry to learn and reconnect with Elohim as Jews. Now, what is your destiny? Re-establishing Sephardic Hebraic identity. How shall we then live now? This is what we need to do. First of all, we need to repent from our pagan roots and lifestyles. If we have pagan roots and lifestyles, and we find out we're Jewish, we have a responsibility to repent. Because why did we go into captivity? Why are we where we're at? Because we forgot Torah. We forgot Adonai. We need to restore and return to the name of Yahweh and His Son Yeshua. We need to restore and return to a biblical Torah lifestyle, which means restoring the biblical Sabbath. If you're not a Sabbath keeper and you have Jewish ancestry, you need to return to the Sabbath. You need to return to the biblical feast of Yahweh. You need to return to a biblical kosher way of life. You need to return to a biblical olive tree. Now, we named this congregation Olive Tree after the olive tree model of the Kehillah, the church, found in the book of Romans. We need to restore male-female relationships and lifestyles in the Kehillah. We need to return to a pre-Constantinian biblical theology. In other words, we got to get away from Augustinianism, Reform, dispensational, or whatever else. And we need to repent from adding and subtracting to the Torah by means of the Mishnah, the Talmud, and some of these other things. This is a picture of the barrio in Spain, and how in Spain many people that were Jews are now returning and becoming judíos otra vez. The Roman Inquisition has in effect never ended, even though they ended in 1832. The Congregation of the Holy Office is now called the Congregation of the Doctrine of the Faith and continues to be a body in the Roman Curia. It no longer burns heretics, but addresses the question of heretical writings, which anything that I would write, the Inquisition would still be against me. The museum that we have was given to us by a lady. It was a museum that was in the Negev in Israel and belonged to her, and she would take it all over the world, and she had it in the Negev. But she gave it to us because her life was threatened by the Catholic Church. She had the museum set up in Denver, and the Catholic Church threatened her life, or Catholics, I shouldn't say Catholic Church, but Catholics threatened her life, that she should not have this museum because it's offensive to Catholics. So they actually threatened her life, broke the windows, and just did a lot of stuff. So she was in so much fear that she comes to our house, and me and Sherry talked to her, and she says, I have this, I'll just give it to you. You could have the museum. I don't want to do it because I'm afraid. So she gave it to us. And so to this day, we have that, and they're still active. They're still around. The symbol in the back is a Star of David with the Zia sun symbol of the Zuni Pueblo. This is a silver piece. Years ago, we did a conference in the Hispanic Cultural Museum with Dr. Several, Dr. Sanchez, myself. I did this presentation, Father Bill, and Luis, Dr. Luis, I forgot his name. Well, he's a silversmith, a Jewish silversmith, and he made this, and he gave one of these to every one of the speakers. So this is how they knew you were a speaker, because you wore this. And so I still have it. And this is a symbol of the Hispano Jews of New Mexico. And this is a memory of the victims who suffered injustice, loss of property, torture, imprisonment, and death in the hands of the Holy Office of the Inquisition. And let's open it up for some questions, and then we'll go ahead and close over here. Any questions? Yes, sir. Yes. One of the ways that they had to find out in Spain who was a Jew is if your chimney was not smoking on Saturdays, you were a Jew, because Jews don't light fires, and in those days you couldn't just turn your burner on. You had to actually go light a fire. And if your fire was not burning on the Sabbath, you were a Jew. Another way to find out if you were a Jew is that the Inquisition would give free food several times during the year. Yearly, quarterly, whatever, they would have free food, all the free food, all the meat you wanted. So the whole city, the whole barrio, the whole community was invited, and they'd all come. But the people that did not come, they were Jews. They were invited, but they didn't come. Why? Because the meat was pig. and we call that a matanza. How many of you in your old communities, you heard, oh, vamos a tener una matanza. We're going to have a matanza. Well, a matanza was a killing of a pig. And it was free food. And usually, if someone invites you to a matanza, it's usually free. Of course, nowadays, sometimes they have an entrance fee. But it was free, and that's how they got people. So if you ate the food, you were not a Jew. But if you didn't show up, you were a Jew. And that's where the matanzas came in. Yeah. And they became so popular that we forgot the secret that we were Jews. So, like circumcision, like pig meat, we forgot all about that. And we assimilated. Every one of us has assimilated. Some people, like my grandma, she had a lot of aversion to a lot of stuff, especially blood. I remember one of my aunts started dating this guy from Mexico. And so every spring we would kill a lamb. And in fact, oh, Michael's gone. Michael was back there. Michael owns the house of my grandma. And now, and right outside, I was going to tell him, right outside the back door, there's a tree, and that's where we would kill our lambs. And every spring we would kill a spring lamb. And so we killed the lamb, and they got the blood, and they were going to bury the blood because the blood has to be buried, remember. Well, this man came, and he got the blood, and he was going to make, he took some of the blood inside, and they were making breakfast and making scrambled eggs, and he got some of the blood and wanted to make himself some scrambled eggs with the blood, which they do. My grandma saw that. This guy was a guest. This was, my aunt was just, I don't know, dating him, or I can't remember. I was so small. But I still remember my grandma got so mad at my aunt and kicked them out of the house. You will not bring blood in here. All that. So many times there's all these, blood sausage and all these aversions to blood. But that's some of our ancestors. Questions. Anything? Oh, yeah. Another picture of the church. Yes. Saul of Tarsus, no. Saul of Tarsus was in Turkey, and Tarsus is in Turkey. This is Tarshish, the land of Tarshish, which is southwest Spain. Paul the Apostle was from Tarsus in Turkey. So Tarsus and Tarshish, two different places. Oh, because Jews in the first century had spread all over the known world. They were everywhere. And at some point in time, Paul was also a Roman citizen. Not every person in the world was a Roman citizen. To be a Roman citizen, you had to be born Roman, or you had to buy your Roman citizenship. Or you could receive it as an honorary gift for service to the king. So at some point in time, Paul's father must have either bought his Roman citizenship and or received it as an honor from one of the Caesars for Paul to be born a Roman citizen. Now, just because you were born in the Roman province didn't make you a Roman citizen. Roman citizenship at that time was an elite thing that very few people had. So it was a prized possession. And it came in with some perks. In other words, you could never whip a Roman citizen. It was illegal, and that's why Paul says, hey, I'm a Roman citizen to the centurion. Oh, we whipped them. And they got really scared. The other thing is you could not crucify a Roman citizen. If you killed a Roman citizen, it had to be with chopping off the head, because that is, it's non-painful. You die instantly. With crucifixion, you die slowly. So citizens, if they did something against the crown, would be killed instantly. And so he was a Roman citizen. Oh, well, his father and mother were Jewish, and Paul's father and mother were Jewish. Now, Timothy, on the other hand, his father was a Gentile, and his mother was Jewish. So, but Paul was fully Jewish, and born in Tarsus as a Roman citizen there, and maybe his father helped win that war or whatever, but studied in Jerusalem under one of our grandfathers, Gamaliel. So Gamaliel, Paul's teacher, was actually one of our grandfathers. When I say our grandfathers, it's because I've done those lines, and if I've done it and you connect to me, that means they're yours too. And many of you connect to me. Who connects to me here? Of these guys that are just here. But if you do your DNA, I know you'll connect to me. Yes. Oh. Yes. What our brother's saying is that several years ago, Spain, in repentance, as an act of repentance in a sense, said any Hispanic Sephardic Jew that could trace their line to Spain is welcome to come back and get dual citizenship between your country and Spain. We received a letter on that, and I inquired about it several years ago when it came out. And several people even said, hey, let's do it. But after further inquiry, we kind of thought, here's the problem. You have to get a lawyer who's a Spanish lawyer. And you got to pay that Spanish lawyer some money, just like people coming from Mexico here. You got to pay, and sometimes that is pretty high. Plus, once you get dual citizenship, guess what you are liable for? Taxes. So you have to pay taxes to Spain. Not only do you pay taxes to your first country, but to a dual citizenship, you got to pay taxes over there. So now we realize that if we have how many Jews? Several thousand, millions of Jews now say, I want dual citizenship. Israel, Spain is struggling for money. Guess what? All these people coming back, even if you pay $1,000 a year, that's a lot of money into Spain's coffers. Now, they are doing a lot of things and restoring museums and trying to get churches that had taken over synagogues to be synagogues again. They are doing a lot of stuff in reparation. They call it reparation. And this is one of the things, and if anybody's interested in that, I have the actual number for the lady who's taking New Mexico, and it goes by region. So if you're from New Mexico and you could prove that you're descendant of, like say, Catalina de la Cadena, if you're related to her and you could prove that, then you could start working for your dual citizenship. Now, once you get dual citizenship with Spain, then Israel will come and say, well, you could get dual citizenship between Israel and Spain, which means you'll have tri-citizenship. What does that mean? 3 taxes. Mm-hmm. Correct. Let me say something with what you're saying. And I'm going to ask you to do this, but every one of you else to do this. To make this grow more, if you have those stories, put them on a PowerPoint or just on paper with pictures, and put them and tell me your story, and then I'll include it. When I'm talking about the Cohens, I'll include your story there. And if you have like a map, you could even make a map of where your ancestors went, and we'll include it in. I'd really like to see you, especially your story on that. And anybody else too. Yeah. Correct. And that what they called a spur. That was a spur. Let me tell you something about your great grandpa. And I still remember this in front of my. In fact, I remember I could go to Miguelito's house. I could go to your grandpa's house. I could go to his house. I could actually take you right here against the wall by the window there. I could actually take you there where I was talking to your grandpa. And we were talking about, this was, when did your dad die? So this was years and years ago. And I remember talking to him and about Jewishness and stuff like that. And I still remember your dad standing there, and he says, yeah, I remember there in Las Nutras when we were small, we used to have books like that with all this strange writing. And I told him, what happened to them? No sé. I don't know what happened to him. But he didn't know what happened to them. But they had books that, which is scrolls, which is the parchment. Pergamino is parchment. And they had those. Any questions? Well, I hope everybody enjoyed it. And we do have an offering basket here as a Thanksgiving offering. But one of the things that we're going to be doing, some of you might be interested in this. We are, the museum and this presentation, we are going to start, I do this every Sukkot and different times during the year, but I'm going to start doing this for the 9th of Av every year from now on. But we're going to start an organization called the Museum of the Inquisition in New Mexico, Incorporated. And if you'd like to be a board member or part of that or a contributor, you are welcome and talk to me. But I'm really looking for people that would be interested in following this up and in even being part. I thank Virginia, and I told Virginia if we do start the museum, she would be the curator of that. And because she has been so faithful throughout the years in doing it. If anybody wants to help out, talk to Virginia and say, train me in this and let me know how to do this. But if you'd like to be part of that, we'd really appreciate it, either as a board member, contributor, sustaining member, or whatever. But we definitely need to do this so that people know who we are. ¿Quién somos? Y de quién somos. What is our identity and our destiny? Let's stand. Father, again, we thank you for this opportunity. We pray that your Ruach HaKodesh might allow us even now to go forth Amen.